This is my TBS Crossfire Micro module. Oh, you've been with me through thick and thin, my good friend. Originally, it only went up to 100 milliwatts, but now it goes up to 250 milliwatts just through a firmware update. Wasn't that cool of them to do that? No hardware update, just enhanced functionality. But I'm sorry to say, your time has come. No, not you either. This is the TBS Crossfire Micro V2, and this guy goes up to 1 full watt. 1 watt is more than 250, so why wouldn't you want this? But there's one problem. I'll tell you why I wouldn't want it, and I'll tell you why I haven't switched to it yet. Because I don't want to rebind all my freaking quads to this module. And today I'm going to tell you how you don't have to. Today we're going to look at a thing that TBS has invented called multibind. Well, they didn't invent multibind as a concept. Multibind has been around for a while, but TBS Crossfire has not supported it. Multibind lets you bind one receiver to more than one module. And it will specifically let you move all your receivers from your old Crossfire module to your new one without ever having to rebind them. At least that's the promise. We're going to find out if it's true. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. So we're going to start right here looking at this app, TBS Agent X. And if you have any TBS hardware, you need to go ahead and install this app. This is where you manage all your TBS hardware. And what I want you to do is, number one, click on the little hamburger icon, the little 3 dots, and make sure you include beta firmware. TBS takes forever to declare that their firmware is out of beta. And okay, if you don't want to take the risk of running beta firmware, okay, there's always some risk that there will be a bug. But a lot of the time, the stable firmware is like months old, and you want to at least know there's a beta firmware out there. So include beta firmware, and just reload product firmware right there, and save or whatever. Then we're going to go ahead and plug in our Crossfire module and update the firmware. And it'll pop up here, and you can see I've got firmware for 3.28. Now, if you want to do multi-bind, you need Crossfire firmware 3.71 or later. So let's do that. I'm just going to hit Manage, and then Firmware, and download firmware 4.0.2. Notice 378 is officially stable, but I'm going to go straight to 4.0.2. I like to live on the edge. All right, so that's done. Now it looks like in order to make this work, you need to wait for Agent X to synchronize the device with your TBS account. So normally, I do not log in to TBS Agent X, but it looks like I'm going to need to create an account and log in. We've got a green dot up here. That means this is associated with my account. And having done that, we'll unplug that, and we'll take the Crossfire module V2, and we'll do the same thing. So they're both associated with my account. It comes up, and there we go, green dot right here, and MicroTX firmware 402 is already on this one. The next thing I want you to notice is that my brand new V2 Crossfire module has both XF MicroTX and XF Wi-Fi. But my older V1 module only has XF Micro TX, which initially made me think that it just doesn't have Wi-Fi at all and I wasn't going to be able to do this. But TBS was way smarter than that. TBS included the Wi-Fi hardware in the V1 module, but it is not activated in firmware. And in order to activate it, we're going to need to jump through some hoops. So the first thing you need to do is download a file that can be used to update the firmware on the Wi-Fi module. And the instructions for doing this, if you prefer to read instead of follow along with me, are here on this website. I'll put a link to that in the video description. In this website, we can go to right here, the firmware files for the Wi-Fi module. And we click that, and it downloads this zip file, TBS Cloud Activation.zip. In that zip file are 2 folders, V115 and 117. You want 117. And then there are multiple folders there. We are working with Crossfire, And this is the file that we need. TBS Cloud Activation.zip, v117, and Crossfire, firmware.bin. So we're just going to take that file and we're going to drag it out of the zip file, and I'll just put it on my desktop or anywhere where you can find it again. The next thing to do is go to the Wi-Fi settings on your phone or laptop and look for a Wi-Fi network that is being broadcast by the TBS module. And I want you to see that in this case, the name of that network is TBS_Crossfire and then a bunch of numbers and letters. When I originally did this the first time, the network was named TBS_XF_AP and then some letters and numbers. And I'm not sure if that changed because I updated the firmware and maybe they changed the name of the network, but you're just going to want to look for a wireless network that is being broadcast by the Crossfire module. The next thing to do is to connect to that Wi-Fi network and then open up a browser window. And you're going to go to the address 192.168.4.1. And you're literally logging into your Crossfire module now. There are three options here: upgrade, Wi-Fi, and web. And you're going to select upgrade. And then you're going to choose file. And you're going to navigate to wherever that firmware.bin file was and select it. And then you're going to hit upgrade, and it will update the firmware on your module. The next thing to do is to get your Crossfire module to connect to your Wi-Fi network so that it can connect to the TBS Cloud and download your user ID. And if it looks like my beard is a little bit longer than the last time you saw me, that's because I've been trying on and off to get this to work for the last couple of weeks. I was just flying you yesterday. I hate you so much. I hate you so much. The fuck is your problem? Why? I haven't done anything. I haven't done anything. No. Oh, I haven't done anything. It's so dumb. Why aren't you bound? You son of a bitch. Just to remind you, you do need to have firmware version 1.17, Wi-Fi firmware version 1.17 on your module. This is the original V1 module that I had, and it didn't have Wi-Fi at all until we activated it and flashed the firmware. But even the V2 module, which I'm now working with, it shipped with firmware 1.08, and it wouldn't work until I updated it to firmware 1.17. So you will need to update the firmware on that one using the same method that I just showed you. At least I hope this is about to work. One of the things that I think is going on is it's just not clear what the status of the freaking module is. So I've also got here on the right-hand side of my screen the Wi-Fi client list for my Wi-Fi network so that we can actually see when it connects at the exact moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Wi-Fi client. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit scan, and it's going to scan for wireless networks. And if I click here in the SSID list, you can see my Wi-Fi network appears 3 times. And the reason for that is I have 3 wireless access points, 3 Wi-Fi radios at my house. So I'm just going to pick one. I'm going to put my Wi-Fi password in here. No, I'm not going to show you my Wi-Fi password. And I'm going to hit connect. Now at this point, it says, do you want to connect to Wi-Fi? And I hit confirm. Nothing happens. I hit confirm again, and it says connecting. Okay. The last time I did this, it actually connected the minute I hit connect, and it didn't actually ask me, do you want to connect to Wi-Fi? And then when I hit, yes, I want to connect, it disconnected. So there's just some confusion here. We can see here it's timed out, and there are no new clients have appeared here, so it hasn't connected. So I'm going to pick a different Wi-Fi access point here and hit connect. Confirm. Again, I don't see it here in the list. And if we go to about, I don't see any. My Wi-Fi status is idle. Oh, there it is. Oh, hallelujah. Here it is. It is connected. I don't breathe. Nobody do it. Nobody move. Why did that time work? I don't know, but let's freaking finish this video. I want to say happy, but not happy. I'm having a feeling. I don't know what to tell you. Okay. So we can go to about, and we can confirm Wi-Fi is connected. We have an IP address, server is online. That is actually basically the information we need. We can press the sys key we can page and we can run the Crossfire configure Lua script, or if you have the full-size Crossfire module, you can do this from the menu, from the screen. If I go to XF Micro TX and scroll down to the very bottom, you can see that now there is a user ID that didn't used to be there before you did this thing and connected it to the Wi-Fi. And then you can go multibind enable. And that also, I don't think, used to be there until you did this step and connected it to the TBS Cloud. And having done that, now, with the user ID downloaded and multibind enabled, all of the quads that used to be bound to this guy, the V1, should also be bound to V2. We should be able to just plug one in and it should just be there bound. So let's see if it actually freaking works. Here is my V1 module, and here is a quad that I have bound to the V1 module. And I'm just going to plug it in here. And it's going to go green, green LED. We are bound. Everything is great. Now I'm going to take the V1 module out of the radio. And I'm going to plug in the V2 module, and it should just go green. Perfect. Amazing. And now I do not have to go through all my quadcopters, rebinding them or any of that nonsense. Just both of these modules are exactly the same as far as the Crossfire system is concerned. If you change your mind about this and you decide you want to go the other direction, you can just go into Crossfire configure, go into Micro TX, and disable multi-bind. In addition, there is a way, if you decide you want to have more than one ID, let's say you don't want all your quadcopters binding with each other, but different controllers. Maybe you want to segregate them somehow. There's a way to get an additional ID or redo your ID. I'll put a link down to the Crossfire Multibind instructions if you want to know how to do that. One more thing I got to get out of the way. I've done this now a few times in recording this video, with apologies to my editor who had to edit a whole bunch of takes that ended up not being used. Sometimes it doesn't go that smoothly. Sometimes you got to push the bind button on the receiver. Why? I don't know. Maybe it needs a firmware update or something. Sometimes the receiver even gets into a weird mode where the bind fails and the LED goes red, green, green, red, green, green. If you get into any of these situations, number one, if it doesn't just bind over to green, push the bind button, try just rebinding. And if that doesn't work, then do the TBS Crossfire Emergency Recovery method. This is how to get, anytime you get a receiver that is in a weird state or won't bind or just isn't doing anything you want it to do, use the emergency recovery method on the receiver. It basically always brings it back to life unless it's been hardware damaged. I'll put a link to that down in the video description. I'm so thrilled to have made this video because I don't know if you can tell, but this TBS Wi-Fi cloud thing, this is a work in progress. Like, there's a lot of sort of clunkiness around TBS Agent X and this feature. And that's not my words. Those are Trappy's words. I asked him about some of these things and he said, it's still a work in progress. We're still kind of getting it shaken out. And I hope that this video can help anybody who's trying to get this stuff going. The TBS Cloud is not just useful for multibind, but there are other things you can do with it. And once you have gotten your modules connected, then you can take advantage of all that stuff. But that is a topic for another video. I am so relieved to have gotten this freaking video done. And I'm really happy that it might help you guys out solving these problems. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to TBS for their support, helping me get many of these stumbling blocks figured out, and for making such a cool product. Thanks, TBS. Happy flying, you guys. What are you doing in here? The least you could do is subscribe or join my Patreon, or like, just here's another video I picked out for you. Jeez.